something interesting, a little outside of cryptocurrency today, because we've been seeing all of these releases of, government waste from the Doge campaign. And I saw one that bugs me a lot. As you guys may or may not know, I'm a pretty avid video gamer. That's how I came into cryptocurrency in the first place, was I was basically testing GPUs. And as a result of testing the GPUs, I went to compare prices on them and found that they were extremely expensive. Went to look why and found Ethereum. So that's pretty much the set kind of reason why I got into cryptocurrency in the first place. But video games have been going downhill over the past few years, and it's really impacted the entire industry extremely negatively, leading to layoffs and so on. And while we thought initially that this was purely due to, of course, the typical left-leaning developers within Silicon Valley, it appears that there was external influences as well. And I want to bring this to everybody's attention because that we're seeing a shifting landscape where these things are coming to light, and you really do vote with your wallet. And I think it's really important to take that into consideration, because they're basically taking your wallet with taxes and forcing you to pay for these things. So DHS, so the Department of Homeland Security, spent $700,000 to investigate gamers and to ensure lore in video games complies with DEI talking points. Now, what's really crazy is I'll show you the sources, right? It comes from Vice, and then IGN, and of course Gizmodo. All three of these publications are positive towards this particular subject, which is extremely interesting, but they end up admitting to exactly what is going on. And to give you an idea of what's going on, essentially the Department of Homeland Security is giving money and grants to essentially research terrorism and security and find extremists within video games. So they're basically, here's the problem. You could say, okay, like obviously terrorism's bad, okay? It's bad. School shootings, bad, right? Bad. We all condemn them. But the problem here is not that we're trying to stop that. The problem here is an overreach by the government to invade the privacy of individuals under the guise of protection. And I really think this is an important point to bring up. Maybe you guys have noticed here recently when you go to play a game of Call of Duty, it warns you that you will get banned for saying anything wrong, right? No longer are the days of the Modern Warfare 2 lobbies where everybody was giving each other a hard time and calling them bad names, and just having, in general, it was understood that that was a good time. It wasn't anything where anybody was being malicious. But you're no longer allowed to do that in the video games. And I thought that was, by and large, a developer decision, but I think that is coming down actually from the government. So should the government be in our video games is the question, and should they be invading your privacy with chats and so on? It's getting even worse too, because if you look at things like Discord, it's very clear that Discord controls a lot of the communications between people, which is why I'm not a fan of that platform and really haven't been for the longest time. So it says that the money is going to a joint venture between Middlebury Institute Center on Terrorism, Extremism, and Counterterrorism, Take This, which is a nonprofit specializing in mental health and video gaming, and Logically, a company attempting to solve a problem of bad online behavior at scale. The project will seek to develop a set of best practices and centralized resources for monitoring and evaluation of extremist activities, as well as series of training workshops for monitoring, detection, and prevention of extremist exploitation in gaming spaces for community managers, multiplayer designers, lore developers, mechanics designers, and trust and safety professionals, according to the DHS announcement. Extremism and terrorism recruitment, especially among white nationalists and white supremacist groups, those don't exist. By and large, those don't exist. There's not a bunch of those guys playing Call of Duty. I'm sorry. They all, like, that's just not, it's so frustrating. Game developers in general from small independent studios to billion-dollar multinational corporations, have lagged in awareness of how extremists may attempt to exploit their games and how their communities can be targeted for radicalization. White nationalists and other extremist groups have thrived in online gaming space. For a few years, the digital storefront Steam was a hotbed for groups openly espousing neo-Nazi beliefs and worshiping school shooters. None of this is true. I've been on Steam since it came out. I never was like, would open the storefront Steam and see on the Steam storefront any sort of neo-Nazi propaganda. My account is extremely old, like Counter-Strike 1.6 days. Maybe if you went into like some 4chan group or something like that, but this just isn't even true. Now, there was a game I do remember called Hatred. If you guys don't remember this game, it was sold on the Steam platform, and it was basically a mass shooter video game. With the twist of basically you're a demon coming from hell to, punish humanity. But it got a lot of flack for that. And I think Steam delisted it so you couldn't buy it anymore. But if you owned it, you could still have it. Maybe they're referring to something like that. But I mean, like, come on. At the end of the day. You weren't approached by the gaming Nazis? No, I've been gaming for over 20 years. Never been approached by gaming Nazis. Have you? Where are the gaming Nazis? I'm so confused. And I feel, look at me. I am target demographic for being targeted by white nationalist groups. I just am. I'll admit that. It is what it is. The people behind this DHS project want to change that. I realize that was an area that was very under-researched. And by under-researched, I mean there was literally none. And it was then that I pivoted my work towards looking at hate, harassment, extremism, and radicalization in gaming spaces, said Dr. Rachel Cowart. And so they started researching the issue, and the grant is a culmination of efforts over the past 2 to 3 years. It's not a topic the U.S. government has spent a lot of time on until the last few years. The federal government's counterterrorism efforts were largely focused on the Middle East. You mean because that's where all the terrorism comes from? The FBI investigated threats related to Gamergate, of course, and released its files on that to the public in 2017. Now, IGN covered this as well. As well as this Gizmodo article, and they all cover it from this perspective. But essentially what you should know that they are doing is that they are not. So there are a couple ways you could run a nonprofit to combat this. One, the way you should do it would be education, right? So you take a program which doesn't even work anyways. Any of these government nonprofit, NGO, BS, whatever they are, however they categorize them, they seem to not work no matter what. But you could say, okay, well, with the drug thing, they had the DARE program, right? It's one thing to have a DARE program that educates kids on the dangers of doing drugs. It's another thing to invade the homes and look for the drugs with no prior evidence to do so. And what the DHS is doing here, or what the company that they are sponsoring is doing here, is that they are specifically going into your private chat rooms and monitoring them, trying to find something to get you in trouble for. And so it's a gross, basically, overstep of basically your rights as a human being to privacy, and they are just going in, and I'm not a big fan of this. The Gizmodo one had a little bit more up to date, or a couple more things to say. They said at the same time, the DHS and its associated tendrils like ICE and TSA aren't exactly known for their moral tact or deep consideration for civil liberties. In 2020, under the Trump administration, American Civil Liberties Union Executive Director Director Anthony Romero called for the wholesale dismantling of the DHS after agents were deployed to agitate and in some cases snatch anti-racist protesters through the country. The short history of the DHS has been filled with violence, the stroking of fear, and lack of oversight, Romero said. We can preserve our freedoms and our security better by dismantling the DHS and beginning anew. So Gizmodo actually does have the alternative view, I'm just realizing, so maybe we should go over it. Says the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the agency that brought you great hits like the Airport Facial Recognition, Kids in Cages, and Short-Lived Disinformation Governance Board, is setting its sights on another supposed hotbed of terror: video games. This week, the DHS awarded terrorism and misinformation researchers $699,763 grant to investigate the ways extremism can spread through online gaming communities. The DHS hopes the researchers will use the grant to develop a set of best practices and centralized resources for gamers or for game makers to monitor and evaluate potential extremist activity occurring on their games. And so this is what you need to pay attention to, because here's the thing you're going to start seeing. These are going to be, and they already are by and large in most of your terms of service, but if you go into the terms of service for most of these games now, and it will get worse and worse, is they say they have the rights to access your chats, your private conversations, all that sort of stuff. So you really need to use a fully encrypted chat program, self-hosted, like TeamSpeak, for example, if you want to actually be a normal human being, not have a whole bunch of people trying to tell you what you can and cannot say, and if you're a terrorist or a white supremacist or whatever, okay? No Discord. Discord is the exact same problem as everything else. Discord is trash. Don't use it. I have to use it for a lot of crypto stuff, but I don't use it. I try to use TeamSpeak, if anything. Extremists have used video games and targeted video game communities and activities ranging from propaganda creation to terrorist mobilization and training, the DHS writes. Game developers in general, from small independent studios to billion-dollar multinational corporations, have lagged in awareness of how extremists may attempt to exploit their games and how their communities can be targeted for radicalization. The grant money will go towards a joint project. We covered that already. And so they're apparently going to use artificial intelligence to address misinformation. If you guys think that this is a good idea, dear Lord, help us. We're going to have this. We're so close to an artificial intelligence dystopia. It's not even funny. We obviously the pendulum's swinging back. I'm not sure it's swinging back fast enough, but we're getting into like 1984 territory mixed with like Terminator. It's like we're going to have AI telling us, if we're terrorists or white nationalists. Like, I don't even know what the heck is going on here. It's insane, dude. In addition to setting best practices and standards, the group will conduct a series of workshops for monitoring, detecting, and preventing. This is a big deal. Monitoring and detecting. That means they're going to be listening to everything you say and do. Anyone who spent more, and then we continue on from there, but I think you guys get the idea at this point. They did do a survey, apparently, from the Anti-Defamation League, and it said video games players and found that 23% of respondents said they'd been exposed to extreme white supremacist ideology in online games. And when you consider around 90% of teens reportedly play some form of game, blah, blah, blah. Here's the deal, though. Going on and, a lot of people have miscommunication. It's like the N-word, right? Like, I go online and I play a video game, people are saying the N-word over and over and over again. I don't know who these people are. I don't immediately assume that they're racist or something. I know that the N-word is in our social zeitgeist thanks to the popularization of rap and hip hop, and therefore people utilize the word, right? There are like things that you could say that may come across as one way or another, but it also could be jokes. By and large, when I listen to people, it is along those lines of being jokes. So are we going to start imprisoning people for jokes because AI told us that they were a white supremacist nationalist because they were playing a video game and said the N-word at one point? And then what do you do if they say the N-word and their skin color is the right color? Like, do they still get in trouble? Because if it's being determined by AI, the AI can't even take that into account. And then, like, is the AI analysis of your conversations going to directly impact, like, is that going to be able to be used as evidence against you in a court of law? Like, there's so many problems with this. It's insane. I know I usually don't talk about this stuff, but this really upsetted me, upsetted me and upsets me because we already have so many problems on the internet, and to see is this being one of them that we need to do, we need to take care of, and we're going to start monitoring people and blah blah blah. It's just ridiculous. Like, are they treating us like children? That's like the monitoring of that stuff is like what parents need to do with their children on the internet, not what the government should do to full grown adults. I hope you enjoyed this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. If you would like to see more from this particular episode, take a look up here. Don't forget to also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support me directly, you can go to sonofatech.locals.com and become a member. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday.